Our darshanit this morning is Shana Dienstag. Shana is a teacher in our day school and a parent in our community and a member of our congregation. And I've always been touched having had her as a teacher and to be able to see her in action and also to be able to share some classroom time with her. I've always been touched by her passion, her energy, her love of things Jewish, and how she brings all of that to our children. It is a pleasure to be able to share the Bima with her this morning.
If I were to ask you which time of year, or which day more specifically, each of us is asked to review our lives, you would, I suppose, tell me Yom Kippur. This week's Parsha, Acharei Mot, opens with the narrative of the complicated priestly sacrificial service performed by the high priest on behalf of the community, which is read on Yom Kippur. The holy place that Aaron must enter is not to be entered at just any time, the Torah says, Al Yavo B'chol Eight, but at a designated time, on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. Immediately being reminded of that holy of holy days, it invoked my memories of last year's Yom Kippur. What was I thinking about on that day? What had I been reviewing from the past year? Whom did I need to go to ask for forgiveness? What did I say to myself about how I was going to proceed in this new year? I was struck particularly by the timing of this parsha. Why this parsha now, in the middle of spring? How long exactly had, I asked myself, had it been since Yom Kippur? I found myself counting months. It appeared that it had been just about half a year since Yom Kippur. I realized that this was a perfect time for a reminder, a recalibration, to get myself back on the right track. In the parsha, as the sacrificial service begins, God instructs Moshe to instruct Aaron to come just at that time into the shrine behind the curtain. I saw that curtain as a metaphorical curtain, one that might have been shrouding my vision over the last 6 months. Getting lost in the minutiae of life, in constant motion, and not constantly aware or focused towards my personal goals, it has been that curtain that has closed my eyes to staying on track. In order to get back to that authentic place of inner thought and reflection where I found myself at the conclusion of last year's Yom Kippur, I have to walk behind that curtain. However, just as Aaron could not simply walk behind the curtain at his own will and without being prepared, I cannot either. There is a preparation period which is essential for recalibration. First and foremost, I have to return to the state of mind that I was in when I heard that shofar blow as the ark closed at Ne'ilah. Second, I must identify how far I have drifted since then. Third, once I have identified where I have drifted, instead of immediately righting the wrong or barging in behind the curtain, I must figure out how I want to proceed in the process of getting back to that authentic state. Aaron becomes my avatar for the process of how I will fix what is broken. He starts outside the curtain, much as I do, but as he physically goes from the outside to then inside, I metaphorically make the same journey. I look at his experience as a model for how we can all affect change in our lives. Aaron brings something with him into the shrine, a bull of the herd for the sin offering and a ram for the burnt offering. Similarly, when we are ready to make a change, we have to bring something to the table. We have to decide what our sacrifice will be. We have to be willing to look at what we want to change and be prepared to accept the change in our lives. We have to bring our broken self and then be willing to fix what is broken. In Aaron's case, he not only had to bring himself with his offering, but he had to dress up for the occasion. Instead of the gorgeous vestments that he customarily wore, he was on this occasion to wear a sacral linen tunic with linen breeches, a linen sash, and a linen turban. After bathing and donning white from head to toe, Aaron was to show a state of 0 on the outside to mirror his state of 0 on the inside. We are to emulate this model when we are encouraged to wear all white on Yom Kippur. This is also ultimately connected to the way our bodies are prepared for burial after death. These rites connect us again to our authentic selves, to our blank slates, complete with clean souls and open to change. We metaphorically dress up to be a willing participant in the process of change. The next step in the process is being willing to give up something of ourselves. Part of Aaron's sacrificial process was taking 2 he-goats and letting them stand before God while placing lots on them, 1 marked for God and 1 marked for Azazel. He sent the one marked for Azazel out into the wilderness. This goat has come to be known as the scapegoat, a term originally coined by William Tyndale, the first great English Bible translator. In common usage today, a scapegoat is someone whom people blame for their own misfortunes and even for their faults and sins. This scapegoat can be seen as a symbolic part of the change process. What part of myself is going to go into the figurative wilderness? Until I have the courage to acknowledge what I want to change, to symbolically put my hands on the head of the goat and send it away, how can I make a change? After Aaron makes expiation on the 2 goats and offers his bull of sin offering, he takes a panful of glowing coals scooped from the altar before God and 2 handfuls of finely ground aromatic incense to bring behind the curtain. He brings sweetness into his process. What can this mean to dedicating ourselves on the path to change? I think that we have to take some of our own personal sweetness into our journey. The good parts of us help us to overcome the less positive and negative areas requiring change. This is a similar role to that of the spices in the spice box at Havdalah. Our rabbis teach that on Shabbat, we are given an extra soul. On Havdalah, we relinquish that extra soul, but hope that the sweetness and holiness of the day will remain with us during the week. Mark Shapiro in Gates of Shabbat remarks that when the second soul leaves our body, our remaining soul suffers a letdown. We smell the bisamim to help us keep the sweetness of Shabbat, the peace we felt, and the joy we experienced to bolster our spiritual energy for the work week ahead. Similarly, our sweet self must provide strength as we engage in change. Once Aaron has brought forward the incense, he continues the process with a sprinkling of blood of the bull with his finger all around the area surrounding the cover, once for the community and then once for his own household. This sprinkling can be likened once again to the amount of change that we can realistically make at any given time. When we really want to change, it has to come gradually, in small increments, and with great intention. This is very similar to my teaching approach. When I want my students to learn something new, I must sprinkle it into a path that we are already walking together in our classroom environment. It is this gradual infusion of new material with constant repetition that turns new knowledge into enduring knowledge or skill. I believe Maria Montessori implemented a similar approach. She believed that learning requires a stimulating environment which engages all the senses, and that the teacher's role is primarily in organizing materials and establishing a general classroom culture. As an educator, I am a sprinkler, watching the beautiful things that grow after they have been watered over a period of time. In the same way, when affecting change, we can mitigate the amount of change we make on a daily basis. But over a period of time, we can see great growth. As Aaron continues his specific and intentional process of expiation of sin, I was acutely aware of his solitude in the progression of his actions. It was he and God who inhabited the shrine at this holy time, and I could again see parallels to our process of making a change in our lives. Once upon a time, we made sacrifices in Jerusalem at the temple. We had a high priest who would one day a year go into the Holy of Holies, and we would all be changed. Just as the high priest had to be alone at the time of sin offering, if you truly want to make a change, you are truly alone. You are the only one who can make that ultimate sacrifice. You stand in a moment of existential solitude. In your isolation, you may find yourself calling on a higher power to assist you, as Aaron did, because at the moment of decision, it is really only between you and God. You realize that if you don't do this, it is never going to get done. Yiddish playwright Saul Ansky, who wrote the play The Dybbuk, wrote, "Wherever a person stands to lift up eyes to heaven, that place is a holy of holies. Every human being created by God in God's own image is a high priest. Each person's life is the day of atonement. Each one of us can face God with the language of the heart. In the end, only we can become the change we want to see." At Yom Kippur, it is the high priest who is performing the rites on our behalf. At 6 months out, it is us. We are the ones responsible for making the changes that we need to make. The whole process has come full circle. Aaron leaves the shrine and washes his body and re-enters the camp. Just as at Yom Kippur, it ends where it began, with a cleansing. The change has been made in an intentional and sincere way. Aaron leaves all the props behind: the clothes, the animals for sacrifice, the incense. As Aaron does, we should leave behind the props that helped us make the change. The props themselves are not important once the transformation has been internalized. The change they have intended to create has ultimately been created. Our goal in making a change must be that we not become so reliant on the props that we forget what we had set out to achieve. It is so easy to confuse the props with the ultimate goal. There are many elements to our journey toward change, but the only thing that was ever important was making the change we wanted to see. Like Aaron, we can figuratively pull back the curtain, bring in our sweetness, sprinkle in moderation, send the goat out into the wilderness, and once again, wear the colorful vestments of our daily life. The color will begin to seep back in and illuminate our newly changed world. Aaron's real life started again, as does ours. On this half-yearly anniversary of Yom Kippur, we have this opportunity to revisit, remind, recalibrate, review, relinquish, and realize what we had set out to do in our personal lives last year. Aaron reminds us that now is the time to make that change we wanted to see. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Well done.